Appearances can be deceiving, an attractive facade sometimes hides the dark depths of the soul. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to recognize the danger in time. Alicia Muñiz was born in the summer of 1955 in the capital of Uruguay, the city of Montevideo. At a young age, barely 17 years old, she moved to neighboring Argentina and eventually obtained citizenship there. It was then that the charming girl decided to try her hand at the modeling business. She dreamed of the catwalk and clothing design, but the realities forced her to start her career with dancing in nightclubs. Money was needed for education. Slender, bright, charismatic, Alicia was popular and often received invitations to perform. But the ambitious girl wanted more. Thanks to the connections she made, she managed to get on the stages of Buenos Aires. Her career took off. Alicia mastered acting skills and appeared on television. Attractiveness and a pushy character did their job. Eventually, the girl became the host of a top-rated TV show of those times. It would seem that all that remained was to meet the right one to make life a fairy tale. And everything changed one night in 1978, when at a dinner after the FIFA World Cup, she met Carlos Monzon. Mutual friends who loved to celebrate brought them together. 23-year-old Alicia immediately caught the attention of 31-year-old Carlos, who had just completed a brilliant boxing career. He reached the top in the middleweight division, becoming world champion and repeatedly defending this title throughout the 1970s. 14 successful defenses made him one of the most outstanding boxers in history. His crazy popularity in his homeland even allowed Carlos to play the lead roles in several films. Athletic, well-off, charismatic, Carlos easily won Alicia's heart. They started dating and seemed like the perfect couple. But behind Carlos' successful facade hid a difficult past. He grew up in poverty, in a troubled family. His parents, striving for a better life, moved from the hinterland to Santa Fe and settled in a disadvantaged area. Money was scarce, so Carlos dropped out of school and started working odd jobs to help his family. He shined shoes on the streets, then sold newspapers, delivered pizza. It was in this environment that the boy became passionate about boxing. At first, just for self-defense, but later it grew into a dream to become a champion. Carlos has always been successful with women. The most high-profile was his romance with popular TV host Susana Jimenez, for whom he divorced his wife, leaving 3 children behind. It was his ex-wife who first publicly spoke about Carlos' dark sides, fits of anger, cruelty, a tendency to manipulate and physical violence when he could not achieve his goals the soft way. Alicia became Carlos' next chosen one. At that time, she was at the peak of her fame. Meeting at a party, they realized they couldn't live without each other. Fortunately, the girl listened to her parents' advice and decided not to rush into developing the relationship. Although it might have seemed right for Alicia to act quickly, she didn't want to lose such a promising man. Still, it was worth carefully weighing all the pros and cons. Anyway, the couple was inseparable, enjoyed popularity and had fun together. At first, their relationship seemed happy and full of love. Carlos was wealthy and successful. Having finished his sports career, he paid a lot of attention to Alicia, which greatly pleased the young partner. But already in the first months of living together, she noticed Carlos' unhealthy propensity for alcohol. It was difficult for the famous boxer to control himself. Getting drunk, he started behaving inappropriately. Fits of anger led to the fact that after 9 months of the relationship, the heroine of the story wanted to break up. However, as befits a real manipulator, he sincerely apologized and assured his beloved that he would no longer give free rein to aggression. Naive Alicia believed the promises, but, as one would expect, nothing changed. Carlos turned out to be very jealous and behaved like a cruel owner, trying to control his partner every free minute. He invaded her personal space and even complicated her career. As a result, Alicia's rapid successes turned into constant failures. Those around her believed that it was Carlos who became the main reason for her professional collapse. She left television, postponed her acting activities and focused on the beauty industry. The heroine of the story decided to become a stylist. Her boyfriend allocated a round sum to open a salon as another apology. Such generosity effectively kept Alicia close, although in reality it was extremely difficult for the girl to avoid the annoying partner's harassment. She tried to create an illusion of happiness, so everyone thought the couple was doing well. But that was not the case at all. Despite all the difficulties, in 1981 they decided to get married. They spent their honeymoon in Miami, Florida, USA. Upon returning from the trip, they informed the press of the joyful news: Alicia was pregnant. By that time, the public was already aware of Carlos' inadequate behavior and cruel temper. Many were interested in the life of the stellar couple, so the issue of parenthood also caused quite a stir. However, during an interview, Alicia noted that the future addition had an amazing effect on her beloved. The newly minted Mrs. Monzon noticed striking changes in his behavior. He became much calmer, so she considered the child a real gift of fate, capable of not only preserving, but also strengthening their relationship. Before the pregnancy, Carlos loved to party and could not appear at home for days, but now everything has changed. Even during the interview, the man himself admitted that he was infinitely grateful to his wife and fate for the quick addition to the family. He believed that now was the perfect moment for this. Having finished his career, earned money and gained fame, it was time to take care of the family. Now Carlos had enough financial means to provide the child with everything necessary. He was convinced that his son would reach unimaginable heights, because he would not have to worry about such basic things as food and a roof over his head, which Carlos himself had to face in childhood and adolescence. On December 28, 1981, the couple had a son, Maximilian. From then on, the young mother devoted herself to raising the baby. It seemed to Alicia that life had finally improved, but Carlos, who had briefly become more balanced, again fell into an alcoholic hell. The woman again suffered from emotional pressure. Several friends of the couple, who were once relaxing with them in a famous nightclub, accidentally witnessed the heavy insults that turned into physical violence. Acquaintances heard with their own ears how Alicia said that she was fed up with this shit. Of course, as soon as one of them shared the details, the couple's family troubles instantly became public knowledge. Later, Alicia appeared on television again, and her words were in stark contrast to the hopeful statements made before Maximilian's birth. Now she claimed that Carlos had not changed one bit. He simply hid his destructive habits all this time, waiting for the addition to the family. Alicia stated that she was exhausted by the relationship and could no longer endure domestic violence. The young mother time and again supported, forgave and helped her husband, seeking to preserve love in the marriage. But sooner or later, any patience comes to an end. She called Carlos a big child who immediately gets into a fight as soon as something doesn't go the way he wants. After that, the couple broke up for the first time, although they did not officially divorce. Pretty soon Carlos and Alicia got back together. To the woman's surprise, the man did not demand a return and did not pursue her during the separation. So he managed to convince Alicia again that he had changed. From then on, breakups and reunions became a common thing for the couple. Of course, all this was accompanied by loud statements that the stellar personas gave to various TV programs. But the public perceived it more as PR than real problems or threats. In 1986, after the fourth breakup, Alicia publicly stated that it was impossible to live with Carlos due to constant mood swings. At one point, he is able to create an atmosphere of warmth and coziness, and the very next moment he accuses his wife of far-fetched betrayals and starts a fight. Despite such statements, Alicia continued the relationship, but now out of fear for her own life. The heroine of the story became a frequent visitor to the local police station, repeatedly filing complaints against Carlos after his antics. Every time she called the guardians of order to their house, the man calmed down and simply negotiated with the officers to leave. Everything was attributed to some misunderstandings. No one listened to Alicia. At this stage, she began to seriously worry about her life, but to her horror, she discovered that law enforcement officers were inactive. Carlos managed to avoid prosecution time and again, simply by appearing at the station. He was a celebrity, so he got away with a lot. In addition, the man clearly had connections in the police, which is why all the statements of the heroine of the story remained unattended. The woman recorded the beatings many times. The police department kept all these photographs, which confirmed the facts of domestic violence. But as soon as Carlos arrived, he convinced the police that it was all just a misunderstanding in accidents. They say Alicia is just overacting. They listened to him and believed him. Eventually, the young mother once again left Carlos, having no intention of resuming the relationship. Instead, she focused on raising her child and decided to start her own business, which she never managed to launch because of her quarrelsome husband. In mid-1987, she returned to the modeling business and began developing her own line of designer clothing. Despite the hope that there would be enough funds for everything, Alicia was mistaken. However, the enterprising woman was not going to give up and again found herself on the catwalk. During this period, suspicious and alarming traces began to be noticed on her body. Her hands were often bruised. Everyone perfectly understood what was happening. Despite attempts to divorce Carlos, she continued to suffer from his attacks. This relationship haunted Alicia like a terrible nightmare. She said that Carlos acts according to the same script. Pursuing his wife and Maximilian in real life, he came to their apartment early in the morning and immediately began to loudly bang on the door. The heroine of the story realized the futility of refusing, knowing that it would only get worse, so she opened it. Then there were shouts. The neighbors heard constant dull blows, insane accusations and foul language, which the little child witnessed. The father beat the mother, and the boy all this time felt paralyzing fear, hoping only that all this would end soon and this evil person would leave. However, in normal times, Carlos had a good time with his son on weekends. At the end of '87, Alicia went to court, filled with determination to see the case through. She brought charges of violence against her ex-husband, who threatened her after she filed a police report. The heroine of the story was so scared that she asked her mother to live with her in the apartment. So the woman became a witness to another attack by Carlos. According to her daughter, he came early in the morning, banged on the door, made a scandal, and Alicia simply helplessly clung to her mother and trembled. The woman managed to convince her daughter that all this needed to be stopped as soon as possible. They even returned to Uruguay, where Alicia decided to open her own beauty salon and invited her friend to work there together. Rumor had it that gradually the woman was able to restore her mental balance and even began a relationship with another man. But the father continued to communicate with the child. The couple had difficulties in agreeing on custody. So everything happened uncontrollably. In the summer of '88, Alicia decided to go to Mar del Plata in Argentina to pick up her son, whom Carlos took for a few days. Despite the promise, the man did not return the boy. Alicia only wanted to get her child back, since Carlos refused to give up his son. The woman also intended to get him to pay alimony. Before that, she had already filed documents, but everything was ignored. At that time, Carlos and Maximilian were staying at the house of a close friend, Adrian Martel. The man was an actor and lived with his son, who was 3 years older than the couple's child. Later, Adrian recalled his eccentric friend. He saw no problems, although he knew about Carlos' peculiarity. Despite this, Adrian loved him like a brother, although later the incidents he spoke about seemed quite alarming. According to him, once Carlos gave his son a knife, which, given the boy's height, was more like a real sword. Having done this, the father said that when Maximilian had problems with the law, he could solve them with the help of cold weapons. It was enough to hit people without hesitation. Adrian's son, who was also present during this conversation, looked at his father in surprise. The boy never understood whether Carlos was speaking seriously. For the schoolboy, all this sounded extremely disturbing. He saw that the man was drunk, so as a result, everything was attributed to a bad joke. Adrian also said that Carlos was looking forward to Alicia's arrival. His main goal was not to resolve the issue with the child or alimony. He sought to persuade her to stay with him once again. Perhaps that's how he lured her out. This time he wanted to use his son to convince his beloved to accept his terms. Despite the determined mood to fight back, the heroine of the story once again succumbed to Carlos' charms, and their relationship resumed. Of course, nothing changed. He remained just as cruel and manipulative. Everything continued according to the usual scheme. Until February 13th, when, on the eve of Valentine's Day, Carlos went to a party on the occasion of a friend's birthday. There he got pretty drunk, and upon returning home, where Alicia and Maximilian were waiting for him, he made another scandal around 3 o'clock on the night of February 14, 88. On that Sunday, between 5 and 6 a.m., a worried man who lived next door to Adrian Martel's house called the police station. Waking up in the morning, he looked out the window and saw 2 bodies lying on the ground next to the balcony opposite. When law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, they found a heavily drunk Carlos there and the dead body of 32-year-old Alicia, dressed only in underwear. Given that we were talking about a stellar couple, the rumors spread instantly. And all this immediately became public knowledge. The crime scene turned into real chaos. Law enforcement officers had to make considerable efforts to prevent journalists and onlookers from trampling on the traces. At that time, the couple was still living in Adrian's house. The owner's son, waking up in the morning, remembered that moment well, because there was real devastation in the dwelling. The boy saw a lot of broken glass and earth from flower pots scattered around. He had no idea that Alicia and Carlos were now in the inner courtyard, so he just got ready and went to play slot machines with friends. Upon his return, the boy was shocked by the scene of chaos with forensic experts and unfamiliar people. The drunken Carlos was taken to the local hospital, where he was diagnosed with a fractured collarbone and several ribs. However, the man's condition was stable. The police also appeared here. He spoke for the first time about what happened. According to him, he hardly remembers the moment of returning home. Having drunk, he quarreled with his wife once again, because she immediately began to reproach him for drunkenness. The champion admitted that he slapped Alicia and also pushed her to the floor. After several meetings with the authorities, the story changed every time. Carlos began to recall that during this scuffle, both of them fell from the balcony. He assured the police that he never intended to harm his ex-wife, and what happened was an accident. After being discharged from the hospital, the man was immediately detained and placed under arrest. This case gained wide publicity in Argentina and even beyond its borders. Photos of Alicia and her husband adorned all the headlines of the press, did not leave the radio and television. Interestingly, opinions were divided into 2 diametrically opposite camps. While some considered Carlos a murderer, others continued to claim that he was a champion, and the ex-wife herself was to blame. He himself insisted on his innocence. In the next few weeks, so many rumors and gossip appeared that it became difficult to understand the truth. Many people wanted to get their share of fame and willingly shared their stories, recalling incidents related to Carlos that they witnessed. But what was true and what was fiction could no longer be discerned. The famous Susana Jimenez spoke out, publicly condemning the outbursts of violence by the former world champion. According to her, in 1976, Carlos hit her in a hotel in Remy, after which they broke up. At some point, Carlos was even considered a dealer in prohibited substances, since his father died from the use of heavy substances. Any such provocation was smoothed out by the fact that the hero of the story was an undefeated champion for a whole 7 years. When the forensic expert's conclusion was ready, it stated that Alicia received damage to the temporal muscle, characteristic of a very strong blow with a fist. She had bruises on her left eye, in the left corner of her mouth, which could also be the result of numerous blows to the face. The woman suffered a fracture of the base of the skull and the left kneecap. Due to the received craniocerebral trauma, internal bleeding began, a tumor formed. Despite the obvious nature of all these injuries, the conclusion stated that the cause of Alicia's death was a blow to the ground. For all those who cared, it was obvious that this was a lie. New rumors spread that Carlos was trying to evade justice. Another scandal was brewing. After that, the relatives of the deceased turned to independent experts to conduct a second examination. Naturally, it showed that the cause of death was not a blow to the ground, but a unique impact on her neck. In the opinion of the forensic expert, Alicia was simply strangled. By coincidence, simultaneously with Alicia's funeral, her husband was participating in the reconstruction of the crime scene, which took place on the territory of Adrian's house. A large crowd gathered here, shouting insults at him. The police had to stop aggressive people several times who wanted to lynch the champion. A few months after the tragic events, Maximilian turned 6 years old. The boy faced a cruel reality, losing not only his mother, but also his father. He began to live with Alicia's relatives. A public trial was held over the hero of the story, which was broadcast live. This became another event that the whole country watched. The main witness was a man named Rafael Boyce, who was simply collecting garbage on the street when Carlos returned home after the party. He said that he suddenly heard a woman's screams, which attracted his attention, so he turned back along the road to see what was happening. According to him, Carlos grabbed Alicia by the neck on the balcony, dealt her several powerful blows to the face. She fell to the floor and did not regain consciousness. The man saw with his own eyes how the champion picked up his wife and threw her off the balcony. It looked like he was getting rid of unnecessary junk. Rafael watched what was happening through the bushes. Carlos changed clothes, took off the pants he was wearing during the violence against his wife, and then jumped off the balcony next to the body. As it turned out, by that time Alicia had already died from a craniocerebral injury. Their son, who was 6 years old at the time, was in the next room when his father was killing his mother. The defenders believed that Rafael simply wanted to get his share of fame. According to the lawyer, in reality, the janitor could not see anything at all, because dense bushes grew around the mansion, through which almost nothing could be seen from the street. Moreover, according to the detectives, part of the struggle with the woman took place in the house, so he also could not see it with his own eyes. This once again caused a flurry of negativity and arguments in court. At the hearing, the criminal lied completely. The champion behaved like a frightened teenager who is afraid of responsibility for his act. He even tried to justify his actions by saying that there was some other person in the house who incited him to throw the body off the balcony. Nothing of the kind could be confirmed. After the preliminary hearings, Carlos Monzon was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and was also obliged to pay compensation to the family of the deceased. This story did not leave people's lips for a long time. The former champion continued to defend his innocence, inventing new excuses. As a result, he was tried, and the murderer found himself behind bars. Once he was transferred to another correctional facility in the city of Santa Fe. Here, the behavior of the famous boxer was impeccable, if you believe the management reports. This even allowed him to receive various privileges in 1994, in particular, he could occasionally leave the prison walls and go free. But in 1995, on January 8, this led to the fact that he died as a result of an accident in a car crash, about 35 kilometers from Santa Fe. After that, Alicia's family decided to cremate the remains of their daughter and transport them to their homeland. Her son Maximilian also remained in the care of his maternal grandmother and grandfather. When the boy grew up, he himself was able to speak up and give several interviews to TV hosts to tell what life was like under such conditions. He described that he suffered a lot psychologically after the death of his mother and the trial. It took many years and the help of specialists to cope with the consequences. He believed that his grandmother and grandfather played a big role in overcoming these problems. Out of respect for his mother, he decided to follow in her footsteps, trying to build a career in film and theater. Interestingly, Maximilian admitted that he had long forgiven his father for what happened, although he was sure that it was he who killed Alicia. He believed that his father drank too much and simply did not understand what he was doing. The son thought that if Carlos had not died as a result of an accident, they could have had a good relationship, at least because he was drawn to his relatives and would have done everything for this, just as his mother tried in her time. That's all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content. Take care and goodbye.